Hello ladies and gentlemen, my name is OzzyBum, and welcome to my weapon tutorial. And today I'll be showing you how to make a very simple weapon, but first of all, I'm going to show you the basics on how to make a weapon. A weapon in general can be in a variety of shapes, and of course, a variety of uses. For example, you got like a spear, you got like a gun, whatnot, that. And of course, you got your typical sword, and then you got like your halberds, or whatever you pronounce them, and then you got your scythes, thingos. You guys will get the idea soon enough anyway. Anyway, the point of this tutorial is to show you all the little tricks I've learned and pass on to you. So, hopefully today you guys learn something in particular. So, First of all, I'll show you how to make a sword, because a sword's really simple. It's basically something that a lot of people will use, and of course, it's my opinion, it's probably the easiest way to show you how I use my techniques. So, what do you first do when you make a weapon? Well, you can either sketch it, or you can just go straight to it and do it. In my case, I kind of do a little bit of both. Sometimes I might like sketch, let's say, I might sketch the handle, right? Like, it might come up with something like this. I might want like a curved handle as opposed to like a straight handle like that. So I might do something like that, and then do this, and then of course, you know, just add the little grip tapes or whatever you want to call them. And you know, that's something. Or you can actually do the shape itself. For example, I'll just go, oh yeah, I just want to do it straight away because, you know, maybe I want to color it in, and I can always move the shapes. So of course, in this particular case, I prefer using the line tool. So the line tool's fine. For other people like Bartholomew, he likes to use the brush tool straight off the bat. Well, I don't know how he does. I don't know if he does sketches or not, but I just know that he uses brush tool. So of course, be very clear. Because I'm using line tool doesn't necessarily mean you have to use it. It just means that, of course, I prefer to use line tool. But it makes my job easier because I know a lot of tricks. So if you want to like follow the guide with the line tool, go ahead. I'm not stopping you. So anyway, straight to the point. The handle, well, of course, we'll make something quite similar. Well, a little bit of this and that. It's a little bit smaller, you know. Something like that. It's a little indented in. And I might make it a little fat because I like it that way. And that way. You know what? That looks fine. You know. Of course, anyway, back to the sketch. You know. Maybe I want to add like a hilt, so I might do something like this. So of course, you know, it's just a little bit of flair, you know. Might put a few holes in them, you know. Something just to give it a little bit of shape, you know. Just a little bit of personality. It's just those little things that really make a weapon stand out. And if you just leave it bare, it just looks really plain. If, you know, you don't necessarily need to put all these detail in, but if you really want to make a weapon stand out, then maybe you want to add stuff to it. Of course, you gotta remember though. Let's, for example, we'll dealing with a gun here, and we're like, oh yeah, I got a magazine. We don't make that magazine bloody big for no reason, you know. Technically, you're making it too big, you know. You don't add a rocket launcher to a sword, like a pathetically big rocket launcher. You know, it's gonna be heavy as hell, and how the hell are you gonna hold it? Hold it through the blade? No, you're not gonna do that. So, you know, you gotta consider a few things. You know, designing a weapon is something, but design it in a way that makes sense is also another thing. So, you know, a little bit of common sense helps. So anyway, for example, I'm just doing like the sketch, doing that, you know, just having like the cut, just a normal hilt, whatever, and the cover. You know, this is a little bit more angular, but you know, you see what I'm doing here. Like, I'm just like sketching, seeing what I want. You know, once you sketch something, you know, you can always do it over. But you know, like I showed earlier, you can either do that, or you can do it the other way. So anyway, I'm going to start with the sword. So anyway, yep, actually no. So after you sketch, you go straight to the design. Right? So for example, I have the handle. Assuming you guys probably like draw as bad as well as I'm doing right now, I'm going to assume this is what it's going to look like. So okay, there's the sword. You got your sketch. You like it? Sweet. So I'm going to do add new layer. And lock that sketch layer. To be very clear, I'm going to name this so you guys don't get confused. So sketch layer, done. Sweet. Now, how do I make it awesome? This is the part that's really interesting, and I hope you guys enjoy this part because it's like fun. So I'm gonna make the line tool blue so you can see a difference. Hopefully you can. Yeah, blue will do. So obviously I'm gonna start. You can start anywhere. I'll be like, oh, okay, sweet. I'll start with like the handle. So you got that. And then you come to this problem. Let's say you don't know where the middle is. Well, if you have something like a box, you can start with the middle, right? Or if you have like a trapezium or something, for whatever reason, you can just do this. Get 2 lines. And just let them crisscross. And that should give you the rough middle. Otherwise, if you have a perfectly angled shape, you can always use the top. When I say top, the actual tip of like whatever the sword is in this case, and you can usually get away with that. In this very case, I don't have that where I started, so this is a really good example on how to know where the middle is. So by showing you that technique, I'll basically repeat that. Make a box, make 2 X's, and you're basically good. Oh, you're basically good, sorry about that. And there, you got your middle point. And obviously you'll just have to delete those points later on, because you won't need them. So now that we got the middle, we can center everything so it doesn't look offset. And that's something you really don't want. So by holding shift, I'm making sure that the line stays straight. And boom. Got the middle. Repeat again. And we got our middle line, which we'll delete later on, like I said. Now that we got our line, we can put 2 lines here, if we like, and we can also do this. Now, there's a trick that some people like to use. They like to use halves, where they don't use that half at all, and they just work on one side. And then once they're done, they flip everything. But the only problem about that is that when it comes to shading, it makes it a little bit difficult, because it means you have to make sure that everything's connected properly. And I did that with my previous weapon, and sometimes they don't connect. And when you make everything as a symbol, it makes things a little bit difficult, because it means you need to perfectly make sure everything's aligned properly. Otherwise, you have like little gaps on the FLA, or the Swift file, and you can see the gaps, and you don't want that to happen. Otherwise, it takes a little bit of like handiwork to fix that. But in the future tutorial, I'll do something like that. Anyway, back to the handle. Man, I've said handle so many times. So anyway, back to the handle. I'm gonna like add something like this, you know, curve it, give it a little bit of flair. This is what a lot of people do. You know, there's nothing wrong about it. So I'm gonna go Control. So what I just did is I just pressed Control C, which is basically the shortcut to the copy command, and then I'm just gonna go Control V, which is the paste command. And I'm gonna do the same thing again. Select this line here, Control C, Control V, and I'll delete this line here. Oh, nope, not that. Yeah, delete this line here because you don't need it for now. And there we go. We got our perfect symmetrical lines. This takes a little more work than flipping, but you're at least guaranteed everything is connected. And long term, personally for me, it makes it easier for my job. Now, we can delete the middle line because we don't need it anymore for the handle. Now, we can zoom out, see if it's like too much or too little. As I can see, it's just too much. So in this very case, I might have to make this sword very big, or I can scale the handle. So in my opinion, as self-judgment, and also your self-judgment, you can say, alright, it's too fat. The sword's quite long, so it doesn't make any sense. So easiest thing I can do this. Easy. Now when I make the sword, it should look like something. Now we can use this line again, fix it up, delete the center lines in the middle because we don't need them anymore. Get rid of that. And there we go. Now that's done. The blade can be done. Now I'll be very clear about the blade. It doesn't necessarily have to be in the middle. It can be curved like a scimitar. It can be about as thin as a rapier. or it can just be your medieval sword, which is obviously your very basic sword, and that's what some people go for. I'll open up an example, alright? Hopefully I can find it. Nope, that's my weapon. No, you don't do that. That makes no sense for you guys. But anyway, I'll go over here. There we go. So, for example, swords. It doesn't have to be in the middle, but as long as it's pointy and somewhat triangular, it makes sense as a sword. That's like, if you were to make a shape black and say if that what weapon it was, you'll probably say it's a sword. That's because a sword always has a pointy tip, and it's like generally what you want to look at for a sword. Same for a scythe. Scythe, you always have this big long stick like a staff, and then a pointy long thing. No, that's not what she said things on the comments, please no. And here's another sword, a long sword. You know, this is simple. The sword's about, well, the blade's about the same width as the handle, but it curves out, so it gives it personality and also a little bit of function. And over here, I got a few other things and whatnot. I know I'm going to say handle again, but handles. So, as a quick guide for handles, you got a few handles. You can have the curved handles, which is known as the offensives. You got the straight handles, which are basically your normal offensive and defensive handles. And there's a few other handles which have like that, which is like two-hand ones. And then there's a few other shapes. If you were to Google them on if you were to Google like sword grips or whatever, you'll see a difference. Star Wars has, well, there's a Star Wars video that has a very good explanation on how each handle is used, as opposed to if it's offensive, defensive, or used for this or for this purpose. And there's a lot of uses. And you can apply that to pretty much any single weapon, you know, like a scythe. You have a big, massive curve on the like the staff hilt or whatever. You know, that's something. Or you want to have, like, say, a dagger. You want to have, like, a really weird angular one, and it, like, tips out like that. And the handle's, like, over here, so you're kind of, like, trying to get something from the arm. And that's something different. So, anyway, enough of the whole handle exclamation thing. So, we got a sword. I'm gonna make the tip. I'm not gonna worry about being perfect around here because, like I said, not all swords are perfect, and it takes a great deal of time to really have a good idea what a sword looks like. So we're gonna bring it about somewhere outside from where the line is, right there. Make another line, and we got ourselves a sword. So that looks fun, you know, really simple, something that, you know, anyone can make. And of course, that's what you want to do. So of course, I'm indenting them now, and it's making a shape, making it a little more different, giving it personality, you know. And that's like a baseline sword. Of course, for me, a baseline sword isn't good enough for me. You can do so much to it to a point where it's just not enough. I know you know I was gonna say something else. Don't worry. So, in this particular case, I don't want a pointy sword. I want like a really blunt, thick sword, one that has weight, thickness, all in one. Of course, I can't do anything to it now because I don't know what to do. I'm not Aussie. I don't know what to do. Well, let's Google some images, right? There's this particular game studios which I really like for what they do. Their name is Artix Entertainment. What they do is make a lot of Flash assets for particular Flash games, and a lot of their swords or designs are all made in Flash. So you can really take a lot of inspiration from their weapons. So I like to use them. But you can also like Google normal images, like swords, and you can still get inspired from that. So for this very case, I'm going to Google them. What was it again? Oh yeah, so Arctic Entertainment, and I'm gonna add in AQ World, the abbreviation for AQW, swords. As you can see, you know, all these weapons have been made in Flash, and you can see how creative they can get, like incredible, and some of them even animated, which is pretty amazing. So, I'll take this one for example. It's really simple, right? It's got a handle, it's got a baseline sword, which is basically square, and then it has a few boxes lines, which is like nicely detailed, and you got the bow. It's not too much, but it looks nice. And then you get to the more like professional stuff, and you see this. Like, it's been nicely shaded. Someone knows how to use the laws of shading properly, and that's nice. So, you know, that's the example if you want to find, like, inspiration or what you want to do with your weapon, whether you want to use, like, this or that. So, you know, my name's John, and I like bullet holes, right? So, you know what? I'm gonna make some bullet holes, because screw society. So, I'm gonna do this, and I'm gonna do this. No, don't worry guys, this is only a tutorial, so I'm not gonna be too neat. But on the real thing, I recommend you guys just take your time, make it look pretty. So, you know, that's something. So, you know, if someone got slashed with that side, chances are the bones are gonna get smashed to hell, man. Like, you don't want to do that. Like, that'll just hurt. Just imagine it being cut by that sword. Either there's two things that are possible. It's either gonna shatter from the sheer amount of poor engineering, or it's gonna cut really damn hard. You know what I mean. So, you know, we've edited the weapon, now it's up to the coloring. Fair enough. What do we do with the coloring, mate? Well, of course, swords always come in steel. You know, that's something. Steel is steel, but you gotta remember there's also other types of steel. There's bronze, there's aluminium, some will come in like different shades of grey or whatever. Just because the sword's normally steel doesn't mean you have to make it grey. So, I like to use, like, a nice sky, a really, really faint sky blue. Just the ever faintest sky blue. And then I'll just use a darker, just a darker hue of the blue. And if I was to delete those lines, you would see the difference. No, you wouldn't. Yeah, now if I delete the lines, it should make a difference. So as you can see, you can now see the middle of the sword. Without deleting the outlines, because you still need them. Sweet, now we've got a blade. What do we do with the blade? You just leave it for now, because for the meantime, if you touch the blade now, it gets a little bit confusing from the layering system. But if you want to do it, you can do it straight away. Which you understand what I mean in the near future. So now we've got the blade, now we want the handle. I like to go with a dark handle. Some people might want to go with a different color handle, that's fine. I like to use color grey, but I might go with a nice leather red. Here. No, that's not connected, is it? Yeah, if it doesn't fill, it means one of the lines are broken and not connected. There we go. Also means the other one's not connected. So there we go, we got the handle. And then we got the hilt. Not hilt, I keep saying that. So I might go with like a retarded color, but it doesn't matter too much. Usually it's a dark. I'll go with another blue again. So there we go, we got a basic sword all colored in. Yeah, it looks neat, it's not too much, you know, anyone can fight with that. You know, it's not over the top, it's still something. So, this is like the important part, right? Like, you put detail on the blade, and then what do you do with it, with everything else? Well, you can add scratches to it. If you have a tablet, you can do scratches really well. I've got a tablet with me, but I'm not using it for the sole purpose of the tutorial. For scratches, you know, you can always get like a darker color and do this. Actually, I'll get my tablet out. You know, I just contradicted myself so hard, eh? So, with scratches, you want to like be quite careful with what you do. You know, it takes a little time trying to develop a style with scratches. Some people like to do this, some people like to do something else. And you can always contradict the color by using a brighter color. So it gives the scratch more depth and shape rather than the pros of just being deep, because a dark color means that it's like inside, and a bright color just means it's being reflected out, which means it's closer to like the edge or something. So from a distance, you can't see that scratch, but like it's not, you know what I mean? Like it's not, when you think in your mind, it's like you can see the scratches, but it's like not scratches up close. But if you come up close to it, oh, it just looks like just scribbles, you know, if you know what I mean. So we got scratches, we got all that. You can do the same thing for any type of metal. Well, actually no, you can do it. You can do the same to any type of surface, but it really depends on like the type of weapon or the type of material you're trying to imagine. So I'll just quickly do the handle because I just want to do something. So I'll just do this. So just giving a little bit of handle more flair. Let's delete the lines. There we go. We got. I do it by indenting them out. You kind of see that it gives the sort of a little bit of personality and shape and feel. Like imagine it. Like if you hold a grip with lumps, you can really feel that it's trying to grip in between your fingers. So doing something like that gives a little personality. I could even like do this. And you can see it makes a big difference, or you can do that. And as you can see, it makes a big, huge difference in terms of how the weapon looks, as opposed to just being like a square. So now we got our sword. You know, what else can you do? Well, shading. No, not shading, lighting. Lighting's important. So where is our lighting? So for example, let's say the lighting's directly behind it. So I'll just draw the background. So the lighting, foreground, everything, and let's say the sun's, let's say, right here. Got the sun blazing right behind it. So in that very case, with light, I'll draw an example. With light, any source blurring down on an object, light will always escape over the object, always. You can do this with like projectile, or you can use your monitor screen and just look at your fingers and see how light travels around your finger. Like, it's just a weird physics things I learned in science once, and it's something that I try to apply to a lot of my weapons, which is why you see a lot of weapons with like white shades on the edge, because I try to like image that, or try to create that scientific effect that happens in a lot of things. So in that very case, the light's behind it. Let's say the sun's just risen up just a little bit, and now light's going to be slightly more intense on one end, or more intense on the higher end of the sword. So I'll do that right now. So by using the ink tool, I automatically get the line tool back out. I might offset it just ever so little to the right. And now we can start shading. So when you have two different colors, try to keep them separate. In this case, I got a dark end, so I'll just make that brighter. And I got the brightest end. With the brightest end, I just make it completely white. Otherwise, it's not obvious enough. And if you zoom in, you can see a difference. And the trick that I've learned is you can also do this. Make a line just offset from the center line, and do that. Get the same color hue from the bright end, and just do that. And then, if I was to make this dark, you kind of see how it does a good job at contrasting the tip of the sword better. So I made that a little bit more blue, just for the sake of the image. What about the other stuff? Well, you can always do this. Do that, and of course we can do this. So by applying the same rules, I can do the same things with the other shapes. Not that one. Of course, you gotta make sure you select everything, because Mr. Aussie here forgot to select these ones. So anyway, back to what I was saying, now you can do that. This, not that, and that. And then you just get full on white from this corner here, there, and there. I forgot to explain myself, but what I'm doing with the color switch is that every time you click this, you get the die drop, and die drops obviously just copies over the color. Should explain that earlier. Sorry, guys. So now that's done, you now delete everything, and this is when the complex things start to happen. So of course we got the lighting done. You know, you can kind of see where the light's coming from. This is like the basic form of learning lighting, is knowing where to put the light. So now that's done, you now do glaring. Now glaring's a little bit glaring's a little bit odd because it's not so much predicted by light, but so more predicted by the shape of the weapon, and it's kind of like, more than anything else, it's really your choice as to where you want the glare to be. And this is something that you need to learn the basics first. So I'll show you the basics. So in this case, we've got a curve. It's curving just so much like that, and that means it's gonna be, the glare is gonna be different. But if it's straight, you just do that. And of course we just do this. That's a really simple form of glaring. I should tell a lot of people to do that because it's like a really basic way to learn glaring. And the problem with glaring is that if you do it too much, it's too much. It sometimes looks too bad because it's overdone. So I'll try to keep it bare minimum. But if you learn the other trick what I'm about to show you, you can do a lot more and make it more like a web cone, but you don't want to make it too much like a web, which you understand. So, like I said earlier, you can do, like I said with the blade, you can do it straight away, which is what I'm showing you now, like I explained earlier. So, with the blade, and when it comes to curves, always indent. Always. If you don't indent, or if you don't curve it like that, it's going to look really weird. So as you can see, it's kind of like indent out inwards, showing that there's like a little... The sword has more than just a flat surface. It's something about it, like it's imperfect. It makes the sword seem more realistic in the way that it has personality. So, when it comes to curves, like I should have explained earlier, always pick a source and do that. Go from the source and do that. In this very case, oh, I didn't delete weird flash bugs. So in this very case, I'll start from the very beginning. So of course, its source is somewhere around here, so I'm gonna do something like this. And of course, if you have no space, just estimate. It doesn't have to be perfect. if stuff like this happens, don't worry, you can fix that. If you want, you can always estimate or be creative and do something like that. Now when I delete all these blue lines, you'll see that there's a difference. So, zooming out, you automatically see that the sword has more emphasis on the lighting as opposed to what it had before. Some things I like to do is I sometimes like to use darker colors as opposed to brighter ones on the dark side. And of course that gives it a little more different aspect on the weapon. So that. Now I'm going to use the other side as a canvas for the other example. I'm going to turn it down because it's going to make it easier for me. Yeah, I better zoom out. Okay, so at the moment, this side is like the basics, how to do things. Alright, so the other side is like the advanced option. Now this side, this is the trick I was really trying to express as difficult because it's something you really need to understand. And I'll show you why. So, by applying the same rules of shapes right here, and similar to what I just did earlier with this by fixing it, you can basically do the same here. Except on this side we got curves and squares, so it's going to make things a little difficult on how things are shaped. It's not going to be perfect. True. So what we're going to do is I'm just going to imagine and just try to experiment on how I could do it. So I want something like this and this, and then I'll try to fix it up by doing that. And then the light's curving in and it's curving out, and I'll do something like that. That goes up and then goes back in. And of course, I'll do something like that and then indent it inwards. So that when I use a darker hue, I'll make it a little darker so you guys can see. Comes out something like that. And then do something like that, and then that. So as you can see, I'm like really playing with shapes at the moment. And notice how I'm like trying to keep little bubbles inside. That's like a little trick. You don't want to make too many bubbles, because once you have too many, it's too obvious that you've been doing it. So every now and then I try to like make points like over here. Keep the diversity up. So that's there, and I'll do that. Now I can just do this. Of course, every time I do this, it's always going to be different. Every single time. So that's the other way to do it. And that's basically what your two options can be. Obviously, the final form of lighting is, of course, shading. Now, a lot of people say that, oh, they get confused when I say it. Okay, so I'll just quickly go through what I just did. So, lighting, which is basically the positioning of light. Glaring, which is like playing with the softness of surfaces where light reflects. And then you got shading, which is of course the darkness and hue of the sword, or of a shape, which I'll show you now. So what I'm going to do is copy, Control C, copy, new layer, paste, and then while it's still all selected, make it black. And make sure you lock the original layer so you don't touch it, because that's really important. Because if you screw that up, you're going to be really confused and you go, oh crap, I fucked up. So you don't want that to happen. So now you got a black shape. But Aussie, it's black, it's covering it. Good, that's what we want. So now we go... So, by making it black, we can now control the hue completely for the entire shape. And that's what you want. Obviously, in this case, we need to make the alpha down, because if you don't put down the alpha, you won't see through the sword, or through the shape. So, we had a brown, no, like a really weird blue color. So, we're going to use blue colors. So, make one end 0, or you can always make it like a very, very faint. So, in this case, I'll start with 0, and I'll make the other end something like 30 to 40, and automatically you can see how doing that makes a difference. This is why I keep saying, you know, it's really important that you get the first two lighting and glaring effects done right. Otherwise, if you don't do it right, the shade won't look best. So when I do this, I always just keep experimenting in what position works best. So at the moment, I really like how the light comes down from here, down to here, and gets dark, and I like that. Good. So what do you do? So once you get one done, add another one and do it again. So now I want my darkness on the right side as opposed to downside. So now we just got like top left that's been somewhat oppressively brightened up. And that looks different. So now, make another one, because I want to do it. Now, some people can stop at 2, some people can stop at 3, but in this very case, I want to keep adding more until I feel like it's enough. The problem with this technique is that it makes weapons look very dark. And it's one that I'm very aware of. There's very, very rare cases where you can make it bright, but it doesn't look as well. So, how about a really dark tip? Give it like a dark theme. And now, one more time. And of course, we got the shading done. Of course, you know, we made it enough, so why not one more? Just for the blue tint in general. So, this is going to be the brightest tint. It's more aqua. So, now that's about 6 layers worth of just shading. This is why I was saying, you want to be really careful with how you do this, but as you can see, it makes a difference. As opposed to just like a blade being by itself. And automatically when I zoom in, you can see that it feels different. It's not the same like it was before. If I was to hide all the layers, that to that, huge difference in terms of personality and on like the metal. So anyway guys, that's the first tutorial on how to make a sword, or at least the very, very bone basics of how to do the shading. In the near future, I'll try to show you more complex forms on how to do this. There's a lot of ways. Probably the next tutorial I'll show you how I do, let's say, shapes. Just like ordinary shapes, and use that in your backgrounds. Because I do that a lot as well. And, of course, there's also a lot of techniques I've known. And I'll show you those, and I'll show you like little tiny information such as like circles and whatnot. I've got a few rules written down on my profile. I'll try and bring that over to on the next tutorial, because all the other stuff that I've done now isn't necessarily all of it, but this is like the basis of how I do it. So hopefully you guys enjoyed the tutorial. And I hope you guys enjoy it. So like and subscribe, and I hope you guys will see me in the future. Bye.